The madness has already started.
Many future college football schedules keep on changing.
And who'll steal the show in the big dance? Let's talk about it on this edition of the 3304 Tipoff Show.
Welcome into the Center for the Arts studio. I am Taylor Bretl, joined alongside Riley Klaus for yet another edition of the 3304 Sports Tipoff Show. And Riley, you touched on it, my friend. The madness has started. A happy March to you.
Yeah, men's basketball is winding down the regular season for a lot of teams. In the ACC, the women's basketball tournament is going on in the conference. We have plenty of coverage across our social media there. But Taylor, this is truly perhaps peak watching basketball experience.
Yeah, it is peak to say the least. So while the women's basketball tournament is in the midst of action as we speak, there are many high-level teams representing the conference that could show what they've got on the biggest stage. Cole Jackson-Page has more on just how many teams in the ACC could go dancing in March. Cole?
It's clear that the ACC has been one of the most dominant and competitive women's basketball conferences, averaging around 7 to 9 teams in the NCAA tournament each year. That being said, the league fluctuates its top teams as the era of NIL and transfers come to the forefront. So let's compare last year to this year. Some of the teams consistently at the top have been Duke, NC State, UNC, and Notre Dame, despite some slipping this year. Now, as the quote goes, when something comes up, it must go down. And we've seen that with a few teams this year in the ACC. Florida State was the biggest example as they were a 4 seed in 2025, then dropped all the way down to a 14 seed and lost in the first round of the tournament. The loss of their top talent was detrimental, with 2 graduating seniors and Tanaya Latson transferring to South Carolina. California also had a small dip after their first year in the ACC as they went down 3 spots. But this was a big year for risers in the ACC. Syracuse was the biggest riser, from being a 13 seed in 2025 to a 7 seed this year, and their coach was able to bring in some great transfers in Layla Fila and Dominique Darius, and also dipped into the international pool, as well as Uche Izoje, who leads the team in scoring. And how about the Virginia teams? They both moved up 2 spots and won 3 more games than they did last year. Now, Virginia Tech is still working their way back from being one of the top teams in the nation, but Megan Duffy has been great in her 2 years here in Blacksburg. And for the Hoos, it's been a steady climb under Coach Mox as they won 2 ACC games just 4 years ago. This year's tournament has been a ton of fun with some close games and comebacks, but let's also talk about the teams who are in the NCAA tournament and maybe some on the bubble. Now let's get the top teams out the way, like Duke, Louisville, NC State, UNC, and Notre Dame. They're all going to make it, and per Charlie Cream, they're all going to be higher than 7 seeds. Duke ranks the highest at a 3 seed. Now the next range of ACC teams include Virginia Tech, Syracuse, Virginia, and Clemson. Per Charlie Cream, they're also pretty safe and won't have to worry. Clemson and UVA were both teams in the last 4 bye, and with Clemson's win over the Hoos, they should be safely in. For the Hoos, I don't think their loss was killer, as Charlie Cream still believes them to be pretty safe. The only team that was fighting their way in before the tournament was California, and with their loss to Syracuse, I think they're just going to miss their ticket to the big dance. Now, this gives an ACC another big year with 9 tournament teams, and was getting close to double digits. The ACC is stamping their name again as one of the best basketball conferences in the NCAA.
Thanks, Cole. So while Hokie's women's basketball is still waiting to hear they will be seeded in March Madness, this men's team for Virginia Tech has a tougher hill to climb. They're sitting on the bubble. They still have 1 game left against the Virginia Cavaliers on the road. What are the Hokies going to have to do to really climb that hill, and what games have stuck out to you the most on their schedule overall?
Right, because like you said, Taylor, they take on a really great team in Virginia, and that's a prime opportunity. If they can get the win, you might be on the right side of the bubble. But now that there's only that 1 game left, we can kind of look back at the regular season and talk about how it all went for them. And when you look at games that really stuck out, yes, there were games against great opponents that, if you want, it helps their case, but I think it's the games that they truly could have won. And a few of them happened while we were gone during break. It didn't have coverage, but I look at the SMU and Wake Forest. They were right in the hands of Virginia Tech, and just having an extra win or 2 at this stage of the game might have been enough to get them in with no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned 2 of those. The one that sticks out to me the most, honestly, I have to go with the game against Stanford. That is a game where you led by double digits and you gave up a 14-1 run at home over the last 2.5 minutes. To your point, you can look at those games where it's, they could have pulled off a big win. I look at the ones where it's you took a loss to an opponent you shouldn't have, and that has knocked your resume. That Stanford one sticks out to me. If I had to pick one where they could have got a big win, that 1-point loss on the road to Miami sticks out. It's unfortunate that we can come up with this many games, 4 or 5 total that the Hokies really could have had. But it's tough, but there's still always a chance with the tournament coming up and UVA.
Right, because teams have just one more regular season game before the Queen City comes calling. So who will take the ACC crown in Charlotte? Austin Blakeman has the early favorites and dark horses in the ACC tournament.
It's March, and there are always 2 things that can happen during this month of mystery. The powerhouses will roll, or the underdogs will prevail. With that, the ACC men's basketball tournament is set to begin this Tuesday, and while seedings aren't set in stone quite yet, we can get a good idea of where certain teams will be when the first jump ball is tossed in Charlotte this Tuesday. We know for sure who the number 1 seed will be, and that will be the Duke Blue Devils. Aside from one slip-up in Chapel Hill last month, the Blue Devils have been nearly perfect in conference play with an ACC record of 15-1. Led by freshman forward Cameron Boozer, Duke has turned up the dial after the loss to UNC, winning every ACC game by double digits. That run even includes a big out-of-conference win over the top-ranked Michigan Wolverines in our nation's capital. It sounds like Duke is indestructible, but that's entirely not true. As mentioned before, they lost to their crosstown rival North Carolina Tar Heels just a few weeks ago. UNC already proved they can beat Duke, and when the Tar Heels are clicking offensively, they are one of the most dangerous teams in the conference. If UNC can put together 4 solid halves in Charlotte, they could very easily find themselves playing on Saturday night. However, there are a couple teams that may have gone below the radar that can make some noise, and the team that you keep an eye on is the NC State Wolfpack. The Wolfpack have been on one of the more unpredictable teams in the ACC this season. They've shown they can compete with some of the conference's top teams, and they've also had stretches where offense can be hard to come by. In tournament play, though, all it takes is one hot shooting night to flip the bracket upside down. And then there's the hometown Hokies, who have had their ups and downs this season, but we've seen before that they can make noise in this tournament. If Virginia Tech can keep momentum early in games and stay healthy, they can knock off a higher seed and could quickly turn to a dangerous dark horse. With March, anything can happen, and that's exactly what makes the ACC tournament one of the most exciting weeks of the college basketball season.
Great stuff, Austin. Well, Taylor, the ACC tournament is still to come, but let's go big picture now that we're almost done with the regular season. Do you have any dream matches that could occur in the NCAA tournament? Because anybody could really face anybody.
I mean, dream matches. There's a lot, which I think makes this March Madness pool interesting. To your point, we're still awaiting the men's tournaments. I mean, we are a ways out. But if I had to make kind of an early Final Four, there are 2 teams that stick out to me in that mix, and it's 2 teams that are both 28-2 on the season, in the Michigan Wolverines and the Arizona Wildcats. I think that this could be possibly the championship if they are on other sides of the bracket. It kind of feels like last year to where you kind of can see that it might be a chalk bracket. I can see upsets happening in the lower seeds, but I feel like these top 4, maybe sneak into top 5 or 6 teams in college basketball right now are so dominant, and I feel like it could be another chalk-type bracket, and I think 2 of those teams in that will be Arizona and Michigan. That is my dream matchup, but I got to hear yours. Who would you like to see?
Yeah, personally, I've got my eyes on individual players. So I'm going to go with Duke versus BYU, which would be Cameron Boozer versus AJ Debansa. We did see Duke versus Kansas, and although we didn't really see that Boozer and Peterson showdown, I'd love to somehow see the best of the best face off as they're kind of competing for who could potentially be the top pick in the NBA draft. Well, we can look forward to March Madness this month for sure, and we'll have plenty of coverage of it for you, but some of your distant future plans may have been canceled. Lucas Harrison has some news on updates to Virginia Tech's future football schedule.
It's March, and the last thing on sports fans' minds currently is football. March Madness, the World Baseball Classic, college baseball, and softball are keeping fans occupied, so why talk about football? Well, it's because Virginia Tech football is one of the most talked about teams in college football with their new head coach, James Franklin. But I don't want to talk about the players or the coaches. I want to talk about the schedule. Since James Franklin's introduction, there's been a lot of changes to the schedule due to 2 factors. Well, the ACC plays 9 conference games, and the Hokies wanting to play better competition. The expense of this? In-state matchups between the Hokies and the 2 smaller mid-majors in Virginia, Liberty and James Madison. Virginia Tech canceled a home game against the Dukes in 26 and a home-away series against the Flames in 29 and 30. Professional. The Flames joined the Bowl Series in 2018, and they currently hold a record of 1-1 against the Hokies since joining the Bowl Series. The last matchup was here at Williams Stadium. It was a 23-22 victory for the Hokies, but it asked the question, do the Hokies not want to play their in-state rivals? Well, Virginia Tech isn't running from a fight. They're actually running towards it. Let me explain. Wins against Liberty and James Madison don't help Virginia Tech when it comes to the college football playoff, which is clearly the end goal for Franklin and company. But losses to those teams? Well, you need to be absolutely perfect for the rest of the season. Just ask Notre Dame after their loss to NIU a couple seasons ago. If you look at the non-conference games scheduled out until 2032, the worst team Virginia Tech will play is North Alabama in 2030 and Liberty in 27 and 28. The rest of those games are against Power 4 opponents, teams like Notre Dame, Maryland, Arizona, and BYU, to name a few. But where does that leave JMU and Liberty? Well, it leaves a massive hole in their schedule, and for Liberty, it makes them lose out on a chance to play a massive in-state rival here at Williams Stadium. So, honestly, it hurts Liberty in both ways. One, they lose a game, and two, they lose the revenue they would have gotten from a massive game like that. Well, the goal for Virginia Tech is clear. Play Power 4 opposition, beat them, boost your resume, and go dancing in the college football playoff.
Thanks, Lucas. Well, Taylor, we've talked plenty of hoops and even a little bit of football on this show, but let's also give some love to the Diamond Sports, starting with baseball for Virginia Tech, who will be looking to pick up some momentum again.
Yes, the Hokies on a 4-game losing streak. They did travel to Texas. Played in a little in-season tournament there, actually in Globe Life Field, the home of the Texas Rangers, but they got swept. They lost to Texas A&M 10-0, Mississippi State 15-8, and a closer game to Tennessee. They dropped that one by a score of 3-1. They come back home, play at English Field against a Marshall team that should be lighter competition, easier competition, and they dropped that 13-4. So they're giving up 41 runs in 4 games, drops them to 7-5 on the season. They are definitely looking to bounce back, to say the least. But there's a team that also is on the diamond in Blacksburg that has caught some fire. Let's talk some softball.
Yeah, let me tell you about Virginia Tech softball. They're ranked 11th in the nation, and for a great reason. They had the best start they've had in the Pete DeMoore era through 19 games at 17-2, and they built a double-digit win streak, which is no easy feat, and this has been against some top competition as well. They went 6-0 in the against the SEC earlier this season in some invites they went to, and now they're back in Salem this weekend competing closer to Blacksburg, and as they get closer and closer to conference play, they are a phenomenal team to watch with their star pitching staff, including Emma Mazzarone and Bree Carrico, and then you get to the bats, and whether it's Jordan Lynch, Michelle Chatfield, you could name anyone on that roster, and they have a good shot of putting it over the fence.
Yeah, you might as well call them the Avengers because, I mean, everyone's contributing. Let's be honest. You talked about the pitching, but the bats. I mean, Hokie softball looking for that national championship. Don't want to speak too soon, but really like the vibes getting from that team. But we appreciate you tuning in to another episode of the 3304 Sports Tip-Off Show. For me, Taylor Bretl, my co-host Riley Klaus, and our reporters, Cole Jackson Page, Austin Blakeman, and Lucas Harrison, saying so long and see you after break.